financial gain while someone's in public office. Someone getting a new job while they're a legislator, that new job ought to be looked at more closely than a job that somebody entered office with.
From what you've said today, it sounds like, well, you've laid out all the information, but you're not really attempting to connect the dots between, what this information might show and whether there are any actual conflicts. Is that correct? And is that because there's not enough information, or you just don't want to do it, or can't do it?
Well, we don't have the kind of information that residents of Louisiana have. I wish we did, then we could fully connect any dots. So we need more disclosure to do that. I mean, we certainly saw plenty of red flags on financial disclosure reports in the 600 plus documents we put online at integrityflorida.org. But we'll leave it to the public to decide, to take a look at these forms, because they're not all filled out the same way. Some lawmakers disclose more than others. Some are more secretive than others. Some hide assets better than others. It's up to the public to ask the tough questions, to look at these forms, and to demand Louisiana-style disclosure so we can have full disclosure and be able to connect the dots and see if our legislators, our policymakers are serving themselves or the public.
Have you approached any legislators about championing this?
We're just publishing the report today. We hope that legislators take a look at it, encourage citizens to share it with their lawmakers, and recommend that they pursue legislation to adopt the 5 recommendations in our report. Number 1 being go to the Louisiana-style disclosure form.
The governor has his assets in a blind trust. Have you looked at that as to how effective that is as far as putting a distance between the office holder and what's going on in his portfolio?
Integrity Florida would rather see full public disclosure of personal financial interests by policymakers and their spouse than assets hidden in a blind trust.
And why is that?
Because those that serve the public in jobs that are paid for by the taxpayers, we ought to know if they're gaining privately based on a public position. Just having something in a blind trust, the public doesn't have enough information to hold their officials accountable.
Incoming Senate President Gates has publicly announced, he said it a few times, that he is in support of reforms, of ethics reforms. Do you think that it's more likely that there will be a push for reform this year than in years past?
Absolutely. Florida's competing for jobs, and ethics reform is a jobs issue. Look at Louisiana, where Governor Jindal adopted meaningful ethics reform, and his state's unemployment rate's been lower than Florida ever since. So ethics reform is a jobs issue. When the economic developers are trying to get jobs to Louisiana, you go on their website for economic development, their version of Enterprise Florida, they're touting ethics reform. New Jersey did the same thing under Governor Christie. Governor Cuomo in New York is working on ethics reform. Governors around this country are taking on ethics reform, passing meaningful ethics reform laws as an economic development issue, as a jobs issue for their states. It's time that Governor Scott and the Florida legislature adopt comprehensive ethics reform in Florida so we can get more jobs. We let the employer community know that this is a state that has government in the sunshine at the highest possible level and meaningful ethics laws.
Dan, a follow-up question to what she had there about Senator Gates. They introduced an ethics reform bill. As you know, it got to the second committee and it bombed out. Personally, I think you got a case of the Fox Garden hen house there. But wouldn't it be better to, instead of chipping at ethics, because you got to get the Fox to pass the legislation, okay? Wouldn't it be better to get a law that would put a cap on campaign financing, number 1, and number 2, put a restriction on how much their net worth can be when they run for office?
I don't think we want to restrict net worth. I mean, it's totally appropriate for someone to have money, to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. What we want to have is full disclosure to ensure that nobody's making more money based on a public position than someone that's not in public office. As far as campaign finance reform, we're seeing unlimited secret spending this year, this campaign cycle. We need to get to 48-hour reporting of contributions. The idea that all these committees and candidates aren't coordinating is ridiculous. It's as if the candidates are getting legal advice from the law firm of Winkin, Blinken, and Nod. The super PACs ought to be gone. We ought to have 48-hour disclosure of contributions. We ought to get back to candidates being held accountable for campaign spending. Just to give you the big 5 recommendations from this report, Florida should adopt a more detailed Louisiana disclosure model. The public should have access to financial disclosure information, voting conflicts, gifts online in a searchable database. Potential voting conflicts should be disclosed before votes, not 15 days after the vote like we do in Florida. There ought to be random audits of the financial disclosures that are filed. And the grace period ought to be shortened. Right now, we have 4 legislators that missed the July 1 deadline for financial disclosure. And they have until September 4th to file their forms before they begin to be fined. There are more than 4,000 public officials that have done the same thing, and that's costing the taxpayers money. John Kennedy reported that the Ethics Commission is going to have to spend more than $20,000 to send certified letters to these folks. Who knows how much more of our money to follow up with phone calls to get these forms in. So we ought to have maybe a 1-month grace period after the deadline, but then start the fines then. Any other questions? Thank you all for coming today.